Welcome back to ECH Institute's in-person podcast at Devconnect. I'm very happy to meet with so many developers right out here, and today we are excited to meet Jochem from Ethereum Foundation. Welcome, Jochem.
Thank you.
So for people who may not know him, Jochem have been working for a long time for Ethereum JS, and we have recently added him as a new EIP editor. So we are going to have some questions around his experience and would like to learn what he has to say and do for the new process that we would be expecting in near future in Ethereum. Welcome, Jochem, and we would love to start from a brief introduction of yourself. Maybe if you can let people know how did you join the Ethereum community and what is the work that you're doing right here.
Yeah, so I'm Jochem. I'm currently working for the prototyping team. So I was working for JavaScript, but now for the prototyping. And well, I mainly got involved in the EIP community as, what I really like to do, like at lunch or when I drink my coffee, is like take a look at the EIPs and like review those and to provide feedback on those. Because I think that for all the processes, like feedback is like the key of like a process. Like you can't make an improvement without having feedback, because
That's
then
right.
you will just like just go this way, and then without the feedback you will like crash into this thing. If you would get feedback, then you would like avert like this crashing situation.
Very well. So you mentioned two things here, like you having coffee and looking at the EIPs. I don't know if it is good thing or bad thing. I don't want you to be very much caffeinated, but you having coffee and looking into EIPs has been very well worked for us.
Maybe it was decaf, right?
All right,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
very
yeah.
fair point.
Yeah.
That's very good. I understand you were also a speaker at EIP Summit. Thank you so much for joining us there. And you brought up the idea of feedback loop. Would you want to maybe expand a little bit, like what are your thoughts behind it? Any ideas that you would want to see be implemented in the process in future?
Yeah, so what I would like to see like in the process, and I'm not really sure if we can bake this in the process, but like I want to see like more feedback.
All right.
Like I think maybe for ERCs, like I like my main knowledge is about EIP, so like for core proposals, and not ERC like more app layer proposals. But for that I see that like the feedback which we are getting at like the official place, like Ethereum Magicians, it's not there, or almost not there. And I think for these proposals, like what I tend to see is that sometimes there are like conversations in like private rooms or like semi-private rooms. Like there's some conversation going on, but you need to know where this conversation is going on. And for this, I really want like to lower this barrier to also get engaged in this conversation. But what I also want to do is like I want to somehow not challenge and also not force people, but I want to give core developers or like people who will attend these conversations, like the message, this feedback is very important to the EIP offer also. So there could be like a semi-private room and people discuss these things and they say, okay, well, we have like this security problem with this EIP, or like we need more tests, or we need more benchmarks, or we need like this or this figured out. Like that's like a valid concern. But if this is not brought as feedback to the EIP offer, then the EIP offer thinks, okay, this all looks fine. But in reality, then we go to ACD, so like part of the EIP process, or at least to get your improvement proposal inside a fork. Then on that call, people say, yeah, we have these and these concerns. And it's like, okay, but why did you not bring this feedback up like in like this Ethereum Magicians thread? So this is really a message. Like I would also like to somehow bake this into the protocol, or like the process itself, that developers should really realize that this is like super important also for the process, because it's for an offer like very frustrating or irritating to hear this at ACD, and then you think, yeah, but if you will just have told me that we have these concerns, like I will spend a lot of time like figuring these things out. But if I don't know that this is a concern, then there's also no way to figure this out.
That is very well said. I understand it took us a long time to bring the Fellowship of Ethereum Magician as central place for discussion. We still are getting some discussion happening on GitHub repository, sometimes on Twitter, and it's still going on. But for people to know that we are focusing on getting all these pieces of feedback in Fellowship of Ethereum Magician. You did mention about lowering the barrier and trying to make things accessible so we can get feedback on time. It would be a good idea to have this feedback process baked into the entire EIP process, especially for the core EIP. But I'm just trying to think out loud, like, do we have anything in specific that we can perhaps make as a mandate for any of the core proposals to be following in order to propose for future upgrade? If we can do that, then we can perhaps increase the visibility of such proposals and we can collect more feedback sooner rather than getting at the end of the cycle.
Right. I think it would actually be very hard because then you would have to write down like how this would look like. And I think like what we also don't want is that we want like every conversation on the fellowship of Ethereum magicians, because then like these threads will get like super long. We really want like to know like, okay, there has been a discussion about this and like these points were made and we want like this or that, like these benchmark, these tests, or we have these concerns. I don't really know like how we can bake this into the process, but yeah, it will be like very hard to write this down, and you also can't really put like a number on this. You can't say like, okay, like this EIP, we want like at least
100 reviews.
Yeah, something like this, or like we want a discussion from every client. Like, I mean, to me that doesn't sound like a very good
Fair
rule.
one, yeah.
But I think it's more about like the intrinsic process of also for like also that core developers feel this responsibility, like, okay, we have had this talk, we have had this discussion, and now we let like the entire public know that we had this talk or this discussion, and now we make this point like, okay, we had this and this discussion, and just point it there on the magician's thread.
That makes a lot of sense. But I also have mentioned it in the EIP Summit inauguration that everything starts from an idea. Since you have shared this idea, I'm sure that we will be getting a lot more suggestions that eventually could be a part of the process and we will have a better one in future. Well, you are a co-developer and we are expecting Fusaka upgrade early next month. I wonder if you have anything specific that you would like to share with the community, any particular EIP that you are looking forward to, or anything that comes to your mind when we say Fusaka upgrade?
I think for the Fusaka upgrade, what we have seen there is some concerns about EIP 7825. So this is the EIP which sets like a boundary on the gas limit of the transaction. And we have seen, this might actually be like a very good point, also like process-wise. So we are now like hearing like a lot of concerns, especially from like people using the network, like, oh, wow, but like now my transaction actually will be invalid on mainnet because I have these transactions. They are like at, so this new limit is like 60 million something. And people are sending transactions sometimes with 30 million gas limit. So these transactions will now be invalid after Fusaka. But if then, so what we as core developers do not want to do is like, for instance, like to lock people out of their funds. Like this would of course like not be very nice. So we want to like to collect this feedback and want to know like, are we actually shipping something which breaks something? Well, there are a lot of concerns. Like, okay, this is maybe not part of the magician's thread. I don't know. I've not seen, I think, a lot of there. But I hear from core developers like they are getting messages like, right, wow, this is breaking, this is breaking, this is breaking. But then we are looking into it. And what we see is, yes, okay, this specific transaction is breaking, but what is this transaction doing? It's deploying 5 contracts in one transaction. And you can also split this up in like multiple transactions. So this is also somewhat part of like the feedback loop, like this is a concern, but then also maybe a message for also like maybe do like slightly a little bit more research. Also like, is it really a problem for you? Or is this somewhat easily solvable? And well, I would say like for the things I've seen, that these are, well, easily solvable because it's basically already in the transaction. Like you can already split it up. Like you are not going to deploy 5 contracts now. You will just deploy 1 or 2, and it will still fit into this gas limit.
That's pretty interesting. Like when we say Fusaka upgrade, most people talk about peer das layer 2 and all, but it is interesting to know that there are other proposals which are like equally making impact and people do care about it. That's very well said. You are going to be EIP editor and would be looking into more proposals, having reviews for authors and perhaps conducting EIP editing office hour as well. Would you have any word of advice that people should be very much mindful of when they are submitting their proposal for EIP documentation?
I think, well, like how I would see that an EIP looks like optimally will be that they are self-contained and that you can read it in one go. So like this minimizes the entire process of like everyone, like if you have an EIP and you need to read it like 3 or 4 times to actually understand what's going on, like to understand the EIP completely, I think that's not the right way. That is also like more about the quality of the EIP. So what I mean with like reading it in one go, like you sometimes see that a constant is defined somewhere, but it is used somewhere before. And this is like not nice, because if you are reading it, then you first think, oh, wait, like I have this constant, but where is this actually defined? And sometimes it isn't even defined. Like that's also not very helpful. But this, of course, like just an example. And it should also be self-contained. Like sometimes it's like if it refers to something, it should also be clear to what it refers to. Or sometimes it also introduces like some new methods. Like, well, I could give an example. We had an EIP. This introduced like this seal32 method. And then you could imagine somewhat what it would look like, but it was defined nowhere. And this is also somewhat dangerous, I would say, because if you would then implement this EIP, you are going to assume like this is going to look like this method, but the author actually meant something else. So like to speed up the process of like discussing the EIP, to integrate the EIP, and also to review the EIP, like as a core developer, you should have this EIP, this document, you should read it in one go, it should be self-contained, and this would like help the entire process. And I would say that for like a draft proposal, like you can self-review it, but then still like there are some things which you might not find there. For instance, like this constant thing, because like if you write an EIP, like you have this constant already in your head, then you are like reading like section 1 and you see like this constant and like, oh yeah, but I know what it is. Like you will like not see this problem with the draft, so with the self-review. So I would say like also get people, even people who are like not super technical, like to proofread your EIP before you like draft it to the EIPs. Because like also from like an editorial point, like we will basically check the format, but we will not really check like the contents. This will be more like the reviewing part of the EIP. And I think like also for like a draft, like do a self-review and like have maybe like 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 people like just proofread it for like maybe the same way as like you would hand in like a report at like high school, like something like this. Like it's really nice to have like other people, also people who are like not into your research, to read over this. Yeah.
I mean, you have shared very good points here. The proposal has to be self-contained. You might want to make it fully specified and just put everything at one place so people don't have to go anywhere else to figure it out. And of course, the feedback is important as much as for author, same for the community and the client team, because they would have to implement and they would not want to spend their time if a proposal is like just halfway through, half-baked, and maybe coming out because we did not get enough feedback on time. That's a lot of piece of advice here. One thing that I would like to add is like be present as well. Like, you know, you have to keep interacting with editors, show up on editing office hour if you have questions, comments, concerns, and then try to learn the process in order to move the proposal forward. Thank you so much, Jochem. That was really great. I wonder if you have any final words that you would like to share with the community before this wrap up.
Yes, I think, well, what I really want to say to everyone, also for like adding things or like being involved in the EIP process, like I think there are some misconceptions. Like I think there's a very high mental barrier to actually enter this process. I think that everyone can actually help for this. So also like for what I just said about like this proofreading part, like you don't have to be like technical. You can just like read this document. You can say, okay, like from the technical part, I don't know it, but like you should like move this section there. You should move this section there so that you can read it like in one go. And also about the EIP process itself, like you are not required to be like a core developer. So everyone can help there, and I would really like to say like we are building Ethereum, but we are also like shaping Ethereum, and we are like doing it together.
Very well said. So listeners, you just heard Jochem. He is saying that we are building the future together, so come and be a part of it. Thank you, Jochem. I wish you all the best for the rest of the Devconnect. Thank you for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.